Okay, greetings and welcome to the purchasing process inside of CRM. So that could be managed by expanding this inventory area here and coming down to request for quote, purchase orders and supply bills that we're going to be looking at today. So before we start, there's a couple of common issues that people come across. So when they're working with purchasing, either the supplier isn't available or the product isn't available. So there's a couple of reasons why this might be the case. So if we come into the inventory area and bring up products, on products that we put into the system, there's a box to indicate that the product is purchasable. So if that box is ticked, you'll be able to put it on a purchase order. If that box is not selected, you're not going to be able to add it to a purchase order. So basically make sure that that box is ticked on all the items that you buy from suppliers. The other issue is supplier visibility. So if we come down to the bottom of this inventory area, we've got supplier companies and we've got supplier contacts. So again, when we create a new company or a contact in a system, there are a couple of tick boxes. So if this box here, I buy from this company, is ticked, it means that you're going to be able to purchase goods and work with request for quote purchase orders and supplier bills for that company or contact. If that box is not ticked, you're not going to be able to work with anything to do with purchasing for that company. So check your products and check your suppliers to make sure that you've got the buy or purchase box ticked, and then we should be good to go. So with the purchasing process, we've got request for quote, purchase orders and supplier bills. You've got no obligation to start from a request for quote. You can jump in at a purchase order if you want to. So what we'll do is we'll go through the whole process today. So note that with request for quote and purchase orders, there are two types of templates that you can use. So when we're generating these records, we can generate a PDF, but we can also generate a web version. Now the web versions for anything to do with purchasing are all living in the admin area. So if we come down to admin on the toolbar, come down a little bit further and come into web settings, you can see that we have request for quote settings and purchase order settings. So this is where you can create your web or your online templates for use with purchasing, and we'll have a look at how that works. So a request for quote is basically the opposite direction of when you're quoting for a customer. So this is you going to a supplier and saying, okay, I'd like to purchase these goods. Can you do this price for me? Supplier says yes or no, and we graduate that to a purchase order when we're ready. So this is an optional step. So what we can do up here is press the new request for quote. We can go and select a supplier company. So again, if they're not showing up here, it could be because you don't have purchasing options enabled for them. So let's pick on the people of Olson's Produce. I've got that in the system. I can specify a PDF template that I want to use. I can also specify an email template and also a web template. So we'll look at those in a moment. What we can also do is purchase things in currencies other than Australian dollars. So we can scroll down on this list and say, okay, I'd like to buy this, but the supplier works in euros. Now that's something that we can also set at a supplier level that we'll have a look at a little bit later. So if you want the supplier to be able to accept that request for quote online, we can tick that box here, which means that they can electronically accept that and that decision comes back to you and updates the record inside of CRM. Or we can turn that off so that they can just view it. So I'll click here to enable that. We can also choose whether the prices are shown including tax or ex-tax. And if you're having a play around with a CRM and you don't want to sync records back to your accounting system and junk them up, what you can do is press this do not import, do not export. So this record is basically siloed inside of CRM. It's not going to sync with MyOb or Xero. And if that's the case, I usually just go and pop test in there. So that will work on quotes, sales orders, invoices, requests for quotes, purchase orders, and supply bills. So it just means that if you're having a bit of a play around with the system, go and turn that on so that the record doesn't actually sync with your accounting system. So we can have our shipping address and our billing address details in here, and then we can start going and adding items. So again, if the item's not appearing on the list, it could be because you don't have the purchasable box ticked. So I'll grab some caster sugar and say that I want 50 of those. And because I'm buying in bulk, I might say, hey, can you do it for $3.75 for me? And then I can continue adding items just as I would on a sales order, a quote, or an invoice. So I'll do 2 of those and say, okay, let's leave that at 80 cents. I can also put any notes about my requirements in here. So the same as working with the sales area, I can go and add notes in here. I can also click on this little green box to bring up the text editor. So I can add more notes about my requirements in this area. Then I can play around with fonts, sizing, bullet points, hyperlinks, images, you name it. And I'm also going to make that purple just because I can. So you can basically manipulate these items, add in discounts or promotions if they apply, and you can see because I selected euros earlier, it's automatically putting everything into the system with euros. So what I need to do once I've selected a currency is go and select the exchange rate that applies at this point in time. So I can go and pop that into the system here. So once I've added all my items, I can also put any further notes about the order in this description box, but then I can hit on Save and Close. So what I can do from here, you can see up here that we've got the currency, we've got the exchange rate, and we've got the totals in that particular currency. So what I can do from here is drag and drop attachments in against this request for quote. So maybe there's paperwork involved with this, designs, drawings, etc. We can basically drag a file and drop it into this area here. We've got our items and we've got the changes that we've made to the formatting. The record also has a timeline that we're able to put activities on. So when it's come time to send this out to the supplier, we've got some options. So we can send this as a PDF by email. So we can basically click here and we can attach the purchase order and send it out that way. We can also send the web version as an email or an SMS. So to preview our PDF version, we can click on the preview button and click request for quote. And what that's going to do is open it up in a new page with all my formatting changes and the appropriate currency. So the other way of doing it is to click here for the web version. So if I click preview as supplier, what this does is brings up the web template. So you can customize these, you can add logos, you can change the colors, the formatting, etc. And we can see that all my changes have populated through. So the supplier can accept that. They can basically go and put their signature in here and then be able to accept that online. So this one you can SMS or email, but obviously the PDF you can only email out. So once we've got the thumbs up on this, what we can do is then convert it over to a purchase order and say, right, all those prices are fine. If you need to adjust your pricing, come in here and edit this, then save and close it, then convert it over to a purchase order. So I hit the convert to purchase order button and we're now in the purchase orders area of inventory. So what I've got is a link to my original request for quote. So if I want to, I can click on that to open up my request for quote, which is now linked to my purchase order. And I can click to move between them quite easily, or I can open that link in a new tab if I want to, and come backwards and forwards between those records as needed. So we've got that handy link. All our exchange rate information and our totals have pulled across, all our attachments have come across, all the formatting changes we've made, and basically everything's come over. Now we've got the same choices here with the purchase order that we did for our request for quote. So we can preview the PDF version of it and bring that up in a new tab here. So there's my PDF version. We can also have a look at the web version here. And again, you can go and create these templates to suit your needs. So same options, we can go and email the PDF copy out and create email templates. We can also email a link to the online version. We can SMS that as well. So what's quite handy here is we've got a couple of additional features. So you'll see that the purchase order's got some different tabs and different buttons to when we were working for the request for quote. Now this isn't the only way that you can kick off a purchase order. There's a couple of different ways of doing it in the system. So we can come from a request for quote. We can just come into the purchase order area and click on new. We could go into supplier company or a supplier contact and initiate a purchase order that way. We can also come into the inventory area of the system and come to the back orders tab and basically go, right, this stock is on back order. We need to order it from a supplier. We can pick our orders and then generate a purchase order that way. The other way that we can do it is directly from a sales order. So if I hop into sales orders in the system here and open up an existing sales order, let's pick this one here. If the products are purchasable, what I'll be able to do is go and generate a purchase order from here. So there's multiple different ways that we can initiate a purchase order in the system. What that can mean is by the close of business, when you go to send off all your purchase orders or throughout the day, you can have multiple different purchase orders created for the same supplier. So you might have 5 or 6 different purchase orders for that particular supplier. What you can do in that case is basically streamline things and merge them together. So we've got this little button here over on the side, merge. So if I hit that button, what we can do is click OK, and it will come up with a range of other purchase orders for that same supplier. Now, knowing my luck, I have picked the only supplier that doesn't have any existing purchase orders in the system. So let's go and have a look at another purchase order that actually has that option. So if I come down to purchase orders in here, what I'll do is I'll click on an existing purchase order that I know there's other purchase orders for that supplier. I'll click the merge button, it goes okay, and then it will come up with other purchase orders in the system. So instead of having to send off 5 or 6 of them individually, one at a time, I can basically go and group them together, hit this merge button, and it will pull all of the different items from all of the purchase orders into one spot. So everything is now here. And if I had links between my purchase orders and sales orders, it's also gone and consolidated those all as well. So that's a really easy way of cleaning things up so that you don't have to go and send individual purchase orders to the same supplier multiple times. You can just bring them all together. So as well as the merge button, we've also got a receipt button here. So when we're working with purchasing, we've got inbound shipments. So basically this whole purchasing process works in the opposite direction to what we do with quotes, sales orders, invoices, and outbound shipments. So we're basically doing the same thing, but we're bringing in a shipment in the opposite direction. So what we want to be able to do is for all of our purchase orders, track all of our incoming shipments. What's been received, what hasn't, what's been put into stock, what are we waiting on, what's on back order. So all the same questions that we'd have with the sales process. So instead of generating a shipment, we can basically go and generate a receipt. Now, this is important because until we receipt goods into stock, the system will not increase the stock count. So we need to tell CRM when we've physically received the goods so that we can put them into stock electronically and start selling them through our sales process. So just like sales, we can have multiple different shipments against a purchase order because in a perfect world, we get all of our items at once on one shipment and it's nice and neat. But in reality, something might be on back order. We might receive some goods now, something might be damaged. So we can basically have multiple different shipments to receive those goods into stock. So this works fairly simply. So what we can do is go receive a shipment. So that will create a shipment that we can modify. So the quantity might change, the items might change, and we can have multiple shipments. Or we can just say, you know what, it all turned up, we hit the jackpot, it's all in one box, let's just receive it all into the system. So let's have a look at a shipment. So what that's done when I've clicked on receive shipment, it's created me an inbound shipment record. So you can see we've moved in the inventory area. That is now linked to my purchase order. So I didn't actually mean to click on that. So in here, we've got the item. So this is where we can go and modify it. We can say, okay, maybe in this shipment, we're only getting half of the caster sugar that we ordered and the rest of it's going to come later. Maybe we're not getting any of these paper bags at all. So we'll go and remove that. So we can basically amend the shipment to reflect reality. What we can then do is we've got our timeline, we can put notes, we can put calls, tasks, emails, SMS. So if we need to follow up a shipment with the company that's delivering it, we can send an email, we can have a phone call. If we need to follow up with the supplier because nothing's turned up, same thing. So let's keep all of that, record, all of that information on this one record here. So what we can now do is go and say, okay, so the shipment's there. This is to be picked, but let's say, right, we've now received these goods. So I can now hit received. That will update the status to receive, and it's gone and now put those items into stock. And what we can do is basically, because we know it's the caster sugar, what we can do is also confirm that stock in the system. So if we come into inventory and products, and we go and have a look at the caster sugar product. So opening that up, if we come over to the stock movements tab here. So this is basically every time this product has been bought, sold, manufactured, receipted, etc. So if I look at this by movement date and we look at today's date, we can see here that 25 have been received into the Sydney office, and that was the receipt of goods. So we can straight away see that 25 extra ones have been put into circulation at the Sydney office. So it's a great way to check those movements. So I've got my timeline. I can come back to my purchase order in here, and click, and now what I've got is this order has been partially received. So as the other shipments come in, I can basically go and click that button again, create more shipments, or mark everything as received in the system. So if we come to the receipts tab, we'll now see that my shipment is now married up to this particular purchase order. Now, while we're here, what you'll notice is we've got a couple of extra tabs here for actual landed costs and estimated costs. So in your system, you can enable landed costs. So we come into the admin area, we come to general, and we scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there's a section where we can enable landed costs. So we'll just wait for that to load, but you'll need to do a little bit of configuration work in your accounting software first to get this to work, because we basically need to have accounts that we can marry the landed cost transactions back to. So scrolling down on the admin page, we've got this landed cost calculation section here. So in my system, landed costs are enabled. If you've got a new database, they won't be. So you'll basically see this. So you need to tick that box. We've got some instructions on setting up the accounts and your calculation basis in your system. Once you've done that, you can click on update. That will apply the change to your system, and then you'll be able to work with these tabs. So until then, they're just going to show as a grayed out area. So what landed cost is so if I'm purchasing these goods in euros, then when I'm buying them, I've got currency fees, I've got the difference in what it comes back to in Australian dollars. I've also got shipment fees, maybe have import fees, taxes, customs duties, etc. So as well as the cost of the goods themselves, I've got all sorts of ancillary or related costs. So what landed cost lets you do is grab all of those invoices, pop them into the system in whatever currencies they're in, so the system can convert all of that back to Australian dollars and add it up so you have a single figure. So you can then see the true cost of that purchase, taking into account all the ancillary or connected costs. So we can do that on an actual basis. So that means I've got all the invoices in my hand, I know exactly what it's cost me, and I can go and throw these into the system. The other way that we can do it is to estimate the landed costs and say, well, I think freight is going to cost me this, I think customs is going to cost me this, etc., and throw those in as estimated costs. So then we can run one of two calculations. We can go, okay, show me what my actual cost is, or show me what my estimated cost is. So we can go and throw multiple different supplier bills against this purchase order for all the other associated costs. Once we're done with that, we can go and flick this over to a supplier bill. So we can basically click here and all of the information is going to come across. So again, I've got a link back to my purchase order. I can open that in a new tab, click on it to get there. My attachments have come over, my formatting, etc. And I've got my timeline here. So at this point, what I'd be able to do is calculate the landed cost if I have that in the system. So what that will do is basically give me the landed cost of this product. So if we come back and look at a product in the inventory, and we might use the caster sugar as an example, when you open up a product, you've got these figures here. So the last landed cost price, so when you last purchased those goods, what did it cost you to get it in per unit? And the average landed cost price. So against all the purchase orders that you've put into the system for that, what does it cost you overall? So it's just working an average calculation there. So when we're calculating actual landed costs, that's going to feed back to the product so that we've got updated information on that side. If we're just calculating estimation, it's not going to go back to the product at that point. So had I put in some landed costs and I had purchase orders for them, I could basically calculate the landed cost variance if I wanted to, which is why you've got to go and set up some accounts in your accounting system so we have somewhere for that information to go. So that is my supplier bill. If I've got a hard copy of the bill that I've scanned in, I can go and attach it in here. I can go and send an email to somebody saying, hey, there's something wrong with the bill. You know, let's have a query, let's log a phone call, etc. So I can log all of that on the timeline of the record. So request for quote, purchase orders, supplier bills, and inbound shipments. We've been through them all. Now let's have a look at the areas themselves. So in each of these areas, the key to managing your workflow and the number of records in the system is going to be filters and layouts. So my test system has only got 6 records in here. your live system is going to have a lot more than that. So what we want to be able to do is look at ones that are accepted, ones that are not accepted, ones that are in Australian dollars, ones that aren't, etc. So we can break this information down into useful chunks. What we've also got at the top here is view selections. So we've got list view here. If we've got the purchasing addresses in here for our suppliers, we can also visualize them on the map. So you can see I've got 5 in Sydney and 1 in Perth. We can also have a look at things in Kanban mode. So we can see that all of these are accepted, and we can also click here and basically filter these down. So let's basically get rid of the ones that are replaced and not show them, etc. So once I've got this information here, I can also drag and drop between different stages and say, okay, well, this one, technically I can drag and drop and say this one's been revised, etc. from this view. Coming back to list view, we can also add tags to our orders. So requotes, purchase orders, supplier bills, etc. We can add the little tag button up here, go and pick an existing tag, create new tags, go and play with the colors, rename our tags, etc. We can also apply tags in bulk to records. So I can go and pick 3 of those and add a tag to it in bulk and say that those people like dogs. If I wanted to update records, one way I can do it is select the records and then click on update. So what that means is if I want to reassign these or change their status or something like that, I can do this in bulk for records and reassign them to somebody or update fields without having to do that per record. So that's really useful. If we need to delete a request for quote out of the system, we can do that here. Now, up in the top right-hand corner, you can also throw all of this into an Excel spreadsheet if you so desire. So looking at purchase orders, we've got exactly the same options. We're going to want filters and layouts for the different statuses of orders, different dates of orders, whether or not they've been partially received, fully received, not received at all sort of thing. We've got our same view selectors across the top. We can add tags in bulk. We can update records. We can delete records. We can also export to Excel. Coming down to supplier bills, we've basically got list view in here. We can add tags, we can delete, and we're going to want different filters and layouts in the system to basically look at what's been paid, what's been entered, etc. And we can also export those out to Excel. Now, when it comes to your inbound shipments, we basically want to sort these the same way that we are your outbound shipments. So what needs to be picked, what's been received, where is it coming from, what's the number, who's the supplier, all that sort of thing. So again, filters and layouts are going to be key to that. So show me all of the things that have been picked, show me all the stuff that's been received. We can also export out to Excel, and don't forget you can always go and manipulate this view, add more columns, etc., and save those as layouts. So that's the purchasing process. What we're going to have a look at now quickly is supplier companies and supplier contacts, because we can basically work with suppliers in a similar way that we do for customers. And what I mean by that is we can set a whole heap of settings at a customer level, or sorry, a supplier level, and then basically have that populate through to all of our purchase orders. So if we have a look at a supplier company, what we can do over on the side here is basically go and pick their default currency. So we can set that so that anytime that we do a purchase order, it will basically go and pull that currency through. We can also have our account code in there with that particular supplier. We've got addresses, etc. So we can capture information at a supplier level and have that pull through to different purchase orders. What you'll also notice is once you've ticked that box saying that I buy from this company or this contact, we've got purchasing tabs enabled here. So what this lets us see, so just like on a customer record, we can go and see all their quotes, sales orders and invoices. On a supplier record, we can basically go and see all of the requests for quote, we can see all of the purchase orders, and we can see all of the prior purchased items and all of the receipts as well. So this is sort of a hub for information to do with this supplier. So we've also got some additional tabs over on the side. So let's have a look at contacts that work there, projects that we've had, etc. And we can basically work with this area and with the timeline. What we can also do from here is quickly go and generate a purchase order. So I might be in here and just go, I need to go and order more caster sugar from these guys. So let's kick that off here. I can also log a ticket, a project, an opportunity, etc. All sorts of things can be initiated from this supplier company record. So it's exactly the same for supplier contacts. If you've got individuals set up, we can do all the same things and we can basically see all of those same tabs or just have these people listed against a supplier. So we can update pricing for products as well from a supplier. So just the same way that we have different pricing levels for customers, when you're purchasing things, you can have different pricing levels as well. So what we have is if we go to a product here, we've got the suppliers tab for my caster sugar. So what I can have is a range of different suppliers for particular products. So I can go and add multiple suppliers and then go and choose somebody as a main supplier. So this is why setting up your products correctly is really important, because all of the work that you do here is going to flow through to the purchasing area and make things really simple moving forward. So I can go and pick a supplier in here. I can put in their part number, their cost for the stock, the tax rate, the currency, what the supplier calls the product, which is usually different to what you call it to your customers, what their minimum order is, and what their description of the product is. So we can set all of this up first so that anytime I order from this particular supplier for the caster sugar, all of these details will be brought through, and it will also cross-reference with the supplier record as well. So let's go to a supplier record and have a look at how we can configure the pricing. So if I click here on Coffee Machine Warehouse, as well as on my purchasing tabs, I've got a supplier prices tab. So not only can I see all of the products that I get from this supplier, I can also go and set specific pricing. So if I click on a supplier here, I can basically go, okay, if I order more than 50 coffee machines, they're going to give me a discount and they'll do it for 4,500. I can also say, okay, these guys have got a Christmas sale on at the moment where if I buy between the 1st of October and the 31st of October, they'll basically do it for, 4/7 or something like that. So that any purchase orders I put in between those dates will basically come across with that particular price. And then once the 1st of November comes and goes, pricing will revert to normal. So we can add as many different breaks into the system as we need so that you can basically have the price recalculate based on the quantity that you're ordering. So that is another useful feature in the system. And if we just have a quick look here, we've got the products tab that's got all the particular products that I'm buying from this supplier. So if we now relate our purchasing information back to a couple of other areas in inventory, we can come up here to the stocks tab. So not only can we see the stock level from the product from the stocks tab, we can also see the stock for everything in the system. And if I scroll over a little bit, we have this field here called incoming. So that basically means I've got goods coming on a purchase order, but they aren't here yet. So this is what I've got in stock. This is what I've got committed to orders, and this is what's coming in. So that's basically adding up what I've got on my purchase orders coming in. If we come to the back orders tab as well, we've got the same information. So if I scroll a little bit further over, we've got the items that are on back order, but we can also see what's incoming on purchase orders here. So I can basically relate that to my orders that are on back order or in progress and say, right, I've only got 16 at the moment, but I've got another 74 coming, so it's going to be okay. So that is basically the purchasing process, and you can see here we can click off the purchase order, kick off the purchase order here. If we come into the products area as well, we've also got the same purchase order shortcut button up here. So we can select a couple of products and go, yep, let's generate a purchase order. So that is your crash course in purchasing, and I hope it's been useful.